welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian. Cenk is out today. He's working on some business. But we have Nando, Vila, and Jobrani joining us for hour one. Hour two, we'll have a different panel. Nando will still be here, but Brooke Thomas will be joining us for the second half of the show. All right, so there is a lot to talk about today, but I just want to remind all of you that we are doing a TYT special today. It is Juneteenth, and so there will be some special programming. Some portion of the programming, I'm sure, will be behind a paywall, but a huge portion of it will be available to the public. So please check it out, 8 p.m. Eastern time today, tyt.com/live. As you can see, we have awesome panelists, including J.R. Jackson, Brooke Thomas, and Adrian Lawrence. All right, with that said, let's get started because there's a lot to fact check, a lot to discuss regarding Donald Trump's kickoff rally in Orlando, Florida. Donald Trump held his re-election campaign kickoff rally in Orlando, Florida, and there were, I'd like to say that there were moments that were different, something interesting to talk about, but really the thing that stood out to me was that there was a lot of recycling of Trump talking points, very similar to what you heard back in 2016. He is basically doing the same thing this time around. For instance, he attacked Democrats, the most obvious thing in the world, went after the media over and over again. He also whined about how unfair everything is and how he's being mistreated and how he's the victim of a witch hunt. He still refers to himself as an underdog, which is incredible because he is the president of the United States. And he lied a lot. And so we're gonna do some fact checking in this story and give you some highlights from his rally speech. Let's take a look at the first clip.
Instead of bringing us together as one America, Democrats want to splinter us into factions and tribes. They want us divided. Not going to happen to the Republicans anymore. It's not going to happen. This election is not merely a verdict on the amazing progress we've made. It's a verdict on the un-American conduct of those who tried to undermine our great democracy and undermine you.
So I thought that was an important video to share because one of the biggest mistakes that I think Democrats made the last time around was undermining how much of his populist messaging, even though it's not genuine, how much of that populist messaging really resonates with his voters. And when he says something like, they're coming for you, they don't respect you, when he really taps into that anger, it not only resonates, it gets people fired up and they become even more active, even more fervent in their support for him. And so I just want everyone to be on notice about that because it's wrong to underestimate how much that message resonates with his voters.
Yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember one of the Trump in the last election campaign in Michigan said one of the best political lines I've ever heard in my life. He said, it used to be that we made cars in Detroit and you couldn't drink the water in Mexico. Now, or you made cars in Flint, you couldn't drink the water in Mexico. Now we make cars in Mexico and you can't drink the water in Flint. And the thing is, he was 100% right about that.
He was right. I mean, he didn't do anything to solve the clean water issue. In fact, he exacerbated the issue by rolling back any type of EPA regulation that was passed under previous administrations.
Of course, but that's the what you're talking about, like that populist messaging that he has. He's actually quite effective at it. And last time around, Hillary Clinton was just the worst possible person we could have picked to counter that message, right? So I think Democrats will have to be very careful in this time around to find someone who can actually counter that kind of populist message.
You're absolutely right, and that's what a lot of people said about the whole Bernie Sanders would have been a better opponent for him because he was also a populist in many ways. What I find interesting, first of all, is that he's sitting there going, these people will divide us.
Right.
His rhetoric is all about dividing. He's got one black dude in the background. I mean, he's saying I'm bringing people together. There's always one black guy. If you look at that clip, there's one black dude in the background, and the whole thing of like when he says, we're not going to stay. Look at that. There's one guy on the over his right shoulder. You see that guy with the goatee? One black, and he's saying, "Bring us together." I think in a way he fires up his base, who are like, "Yes, white people, we're going to stick together," and that one black guy's like, "Yes, we will." Yeah. So it for someone who's got divisive politics as an immigrant, I feel like in his eyes, my community is a no-no. It's a I mean, we are. I mean, I'm Iranian American, so we're on the travel ban. So it's like, how are you bringing us together? You're separating people with the travel ban. You're separating communities. I have people within the community that are arguing with each other. So he's not bringing people together, but for him to get up there and have the gall to say that, and then for them to clap is what you guys were saying. It's the populist message going like, yeah, you're right. Like even though we're doing what you're saying that you don't want to do, we are gonna fix it, and they're doing it. You know what I'm saying?
It is incredible. I mean, look, the Democrats have a hard time unifying within their own party. I'm pretty sure that they're not thinking about ways to divide the Republican Party. And if he's talking about broader unification, right? Yeah, I mean, what is the first thing that Trump did once he was inaugurated? He puts out a tweet indicating that transgender members of the military will no longer be part of the military, right? That was beyond divisive. That is a way of separating people, dividing people. Then he goes into his immigration policy, the travel ban. I mean, these policies are meant to divide Americans.
Well, his first announcement was the whole Mexicans being rapists. And I mean, these are all, by the way, I feel like we're arguing things that we've been talking about for 3 years. But the fact is, what you also alluded to at the beginning, it's his greatest hits. Like, it hasn't changed. Like, his rallies are like another Fast and the Furious. It's like, we've seen it before. We know what's gonna happen. You know, there's gonna be a car chase. Vin Diesel's gonna win. You know, we all know what's gonna happen.
Or
right?
another episode of The Housewives, right? Like, it's always the same thing. Someone plans a party, everyone goes to the party, they get into some drama, and then they talk about each other during the one-on-one interviews, and then we're all amused, but that's a reality show. This is the United States of America, this is government, and we should have a better leader.
And in his case, because he keeps eating Big Macs, it's becoming the Fat and the Furious. So I just had to get that out. I'm sorry if I don't want to offend anybody who's heavy. Just wanted to say.
Big Macs are good. It's a good sandwich.
It's a good sandwich.
It's a good sandwich.
All right, let's take a look at some more of the rally speech.
We stared down the unholy alliance of lobbyists and donors and special interests who made a living bleeding our country dry. That's what we've done. We broke down the doors of Washington back rooms where deals were cut to close our companies, give away your jobs, shut down our factories, and surrender your sovereignty and your very way of life, and we've ended it.
So he is still attempting to take credit or pretend as if he drained the swamp, as if he has done anything positive in rolling back government corruption. I mean, what you see in his cabinet, what you've seen in the people who he has decided to appoint for various positions is the very definition of swampy behavior. I mean, we're gonna talk about Patrick Shanahan later, who was the acting defense secretary, not no mores though, and we'll tell you why later. But I mean, homeboy worked at Boeing, right? Now
his replacement worked at Raytheon.
Exactly. So that is the type of, we talk about the revolving door of politics. That's certainly part of the corruption. He hasn't done anything about money in politics. He's receiving massive campaign donations. He received massive donations for his inauguration from all sorts of corporations, including private prisons, who are looking for favors from Donald Trump. So he hasn't carried out any of the promises that he made to his voters. He's done the exact opposite, and he still somehow miraculously takes credit. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that messaging of targeting lobbyists, targeting the elite interests. I mean, he's correct in doing so. Like, he's correct in doing that on a messaging standpoint, because it is a fact that those people are sucking us dry. The question, and for whatever reason, and we can talk about this ad nauseum, but for whatever reason, Trump sounds credible to a significant chunk of people when he delivers that message. The Democrats before weren't countering that message by saying, we don't like the lobbyists and all that stuff either. And they didn't have an effective messenger to deliver that message, but that is a broadly popular sentiment. There is this feeling that there are these interests in Washington who control everything in the back rooms and rig stuff to help themselves against everyone else. I mean,
and that anger is certainly warranted, but Maz, do you think that it's going to be different this time around? Because while Hillary Clinton didn't touch on that at all.
No, absolutely. Listen, absolutely not. Again, this goes back to he's giving this speech and saying what he's doing. I mean, basically His hotel in Washington, all these foreign governments are coming staying at his hotel. So if you want swamp, I mean, he's the swampiest of the swamps. You got the whole Jared Kushner thing with the Chinese visas that they were given for exchange for investments in their. I mean, the family is benefiting. Let's start with that swamp. Yes. You got your Scott Pruitts. You got your. You got your Rex Tillerson from the oil. I mean, it's just it is so. Blatantly obvious, but what happens is, and I say this like even in the beginning, if you had put him on paper, New York elite billionaire, these people that he got to vote for him would have said that's who we're hating, and he was over there going, we got to get these elites out. Well, you're one of the elites, dude. And so going back to like why do they follow him? It's the populist message. It's also I do feel there's a lot of this. I think there's a racism thing there. I believe. I think it's very easy to go. The immigrants are taking your jobs. Black people are doing this, doing that, and finally they're like, finally someone's speaking my language, and whatever you say, I'm gonna listen to, and I'm gonna close my eyes to the fact that you are the swamp. He is the swamp, but they sit there and keep cheering him on.
Maggie Haberman at the Times went to the rally, which I'd be terrified if I were Maggie Haberman, considering some of the reporting she's done on Trump. But anyway, she goes and she actually speaks to the rally goers and says, look, Trump is trying to identify himself as this underdog. Do you think he's an underdog? And every single person she asked said no. So while he might attempt to push this I'm not an elitist message, I don't know if it's gonna work this time around. I guess we'll see. But going back to the point regarding how he's just bringing back his greatest hits from 2016, here's another example of him doing just that.
We went through the greatest witch hunt in political history. The only collusion was committed by the Democrats, the fake news media and their operatives, and the people who funded the phony dossier, crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC.
I get that some of his voters find him entertaining, but you can only watch the same rerun over and over again so many times, right? I mean, it's a lie. We've already like dissected that argument a million times, but he keeps saying it. I feel like at this point, all he needs to do is mention Hillary Clinton, and then his crowd goes wild. She's in the woods. Why? Like, he has nothing. He has nothing. He can't turn to what he's accomplished because he hasn't accomplished anything.
Except for the tax cuts.
Except for the tax cuts, which are not popular among voters. And the reason why they're not popular is because we're not idiots. I mean, we all get our paychecks. We all see what the tax cuts did for us as working class and middle class Americans. But the vast majority of wealthy Americans got massive tax cuts, which is why Amazon got away with paying nothing in federal taxes last year.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, but I mean, I've been to a couple of Trump rallies in the past, in the last election cycle, and it is a kind of very bizarre experience. It is kind of seeing like a comedian on this like open night, just kind of riffing, and he is quite good at feeling the crowd and seeing like what's playing and what's not. Like sometimes you can see the prompter, and he like abandons a certain line that's like not really playing, and then he just kind of goes off script and whatever. But like you said, your first reaction is that he's recycling everything, but like you're a comedian, like how does Trump recycle his material? How do you refresh the material when you're running out of ideas?
Well, I think a big part of it is there's no logic here, right? In terms of, again, you look at what Mueller said, you look at you read some of the report, and there's all these possible obstruction. There's a lot of stuff there. Even the interview he did with Stephanopoulos, who says, he goes, there's no collusion. He goes, well, Mueller didn't say there's no collusion. He said that he couldn't go after collusion. And he goes, no, he said there's no collusion.
And then he walks out of the car.
And he walks out of the car. Yeah. So there's no logic here. It's all emotions. And that's kind of what happens in a comedy show. Or in my case, I'll take comedian, but I would also say almost like a cult leader of sorts. It's all emotions, and they're going, whatever he says, we believe. We think he is. Of course, he's right. This was a waste of money. And by the way, he would be, and he is a genius PR person. Like he would be so great as the head of a publicity firm because he can just twist things. He took the whole Mueller investigation and turned it now into the waste of money. Now we're gonna go investigate them. Now he flips it, and now his people, again, emotionally, there's no logic there. No one's sitting there going like, oh, I read it, and you know what? I have my doubts. Like nobody's sitting there raising their hands going like, dude, hold on a second. There might have been, they're all going like, yeah, whatever you say. It is a cult, it's a cult of sorts.
Yeah, look, I think this is the type of speech, if I were running against him, I would obsessively watch every single one of his speeches. And then every time he lies, or anytime he says something that really resonates with his voters, right? When he pretends like he's draining the swamp, when he pretends like he's looking out for the working class or middle class, all of that stuff. And I would find a way to hit him on those issues and call him out as the liar that he really is. But I would also focus on that message myself, not from a disingenuous place, but from a place of sincerity and actually wanting to do something about some of the economic injustices that he taps into to exploit for his own electoral purposes, right? But I don't know, look, I think that there are some really strong candidates. I think Bernie Sanders already on his own does that, you know? He doesn't really need someone to consult him and tell him to do that. He is sincere and genuine in wanting to solve some of these issues. But my worry is that we will repeat the same mistakes as 2016, right? I watch this speech and I see the reactions from the crowd and I'm like, man, I really hope everyone's watching on the Democratic side. I really hope they're taking notes, because if they plan on ignoring the anger that these voters feel, and look, I know you're not gonna persuade Trump voters, that's not the point. But my point is having a message that resonates with a broader base of voters who do feel that economic frustration, you know?
Voters in every democracy in the history of the world vote for things, not against things. In certain very pointed examples you might find, but like, in the vast majority of cases, voters are moved to go to the polls and vote for someone because they believe in that positive vision. You can scare them with the big bad Republicans all you want. That's all the Democrats have been doing for the last 20 years. I remember the 2004 election against Bush very well. I mean, like every single celebrity in America did the Vote for Change tour, and Bush was like the big bad wolf.
I remember
that. But because the Democratic candidate was this wet noodle, John Kerry, he lost. Voters don't vote against people, they vote for people.
All right, so I wanna go through some other things that deserve to be fact checked before we move on. So let me just note that according to the fact checking that was done by CNN, his 76-minute speech, and it was 76 minutes long, I watched the whole thing.
What?
Featured more than 15, I gotta do my work, right? I gotta make sure I know what he said. Featured more than 15 false statements, many of them ones that he's repeated frequently in the past.
I mean, that seems low.
That does seem low.
I believe that there were more, but they did their best. So I'll give you a few that I think are notable. So for instance, he said, we've ended the last administration's cruel and heartless law on American energy. What they were doing to our energy should never be forgotten. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world. That's a lie.
Well, is he now crying for Chevron? Is that what that was? Like, what are they doing to Chevron? Poor Chevron and Shell and all these oil companies.
I mean, it's this like whole notion of being a patriotic American who's looking out for being for our oil companies and ensuring that we're the top oil exporter. That's really what this is. It taps into that, like in my opinion, faux patriotic BS. And so obviously if you look at the facts though, the US was the world's #1 energy producer before Trump took office since 2012 under Obama. And I remember that vividly. I remember we were at Current TV, we covered that story, and I remember thinking, this is very bad. Obama is not bringing his best, right? Like that's not something
Obama bragged about it like a month ago, and it was like, dude, maybe you shouldn't brag about that these days.
Yeah, definitely
we're all gonna burn in climate change hell.
He also said, Trump said during his speech, and we couldn't get the wall approved by the Democrats, even though they voted for it 4 years ago and 6 years ago. And so was it 4 years or 6 years ago? And didn't get built, but they voted for it. All of a sudden, Trump is president, we don't want a wall. Well, that's not necessarily true. So did Democrats vote in favor of a wall? No. Did some of them vote in favor of some fencing? Yes. So according to CNN, wall construction is not moving very rapidly, as Donald Trump said. As of May, 0 miles of wall had been erected in places where there had not been previously a barrier, right? Now, Trump argues that the new fencing installed to replace older fencing should be counted as his wall, though he campaigned on a new giant concrete wall. So.
Yeah, he keeps changing them. Remember, he would call them for a minute. He was calling them metal slabs, and then he's
slants,
like, slant, right? Is that what it was? Look, we're trying to do a remodel at my house, and it's taken 2 years.
I hear you.
So I don't know about this wall. He keeps talking about the wall. He's got no money for the wall. He's trying to find ways for the wall. It was Mexicans first, then it was, then it was we're gonna put tariffs on them. Avocados were gonna be more expensive. I will take cheaper avocados and no wall any day of the week.
I remember some of the fear. Agreed. I remember some of the fear mongering about Mexican immigrants coming into the country. And I don't remember if it was Trump specifically, but it was certainly a right winger. And he said something about there's gonna be taco trucks on every corner.
Yeah, sounds great.
I'm like,
yeah, hello, LA.
Yeah,
well, he also
we
said,
of already have that in LA, which is great.
Listen, as someone who's an Iranian American, when he was scaring people, he would say, there's a caravan coming, there's a caravan coming. Like they're walking towards us at half a mile a day. And then he would be like, and there's some unknown Middle Easterners in the caravan. Remember that? Yeah, I was watching that, I go, that sounds like every party at my house. There's always some unknown Middle Easterners. What's the big deal? Right?
Totally.
Right?
Totally. All right, let me give you a few more. He also said our air and water are the cleanest they've ever been by far. And I just want you guys to check out Emma Vigeland's incredible reporting. So she did a report on Mountain Air, that is one of Trump's biggest campaign contributors, the 5th largest campaign contributor to Donald Trump. They're chicken producers. And they have completely contaminated the drinking water and the well water in Delaware.
Wow.
So no, we do not have the cleanest drinking water. In fact, he has essentially rolled back many of the regulations that keep our drinking water clean, that keep our air clean. And the American Lung Association found that in 2015 to 2017, more cities had high days of ozone and short-term particle pollution compared to 2014 to 2016. 141.1 million people lived in counties with unhealthful levels of either ozone and or particle pollution, an increase of more than 7.2 million Americans since the last annual report. 8 cities recorded their highest number of days with unhealthy spikes in particle pollution since the nation began monitoring this pollutant 20 years ago. So there were all sorts of lies. Obviously, we can't get to every single one of them because that would take up the entire show today, tomorrow, and the next day. But he's a liar, and it's incredible how he's gotten this far with completely lying to his voters, to the American public, and they feel it. I mean, we're all living in the same society. We see the ramifications, but he's somehow Teflon Don when it comes to some of these voters.
Well, my question is, I'm wondering, is he just making this up? You went to the rally. Is he just making these numbers up as he goes? Or does he have people that are giving these numbers and putting it on the teleprompter?
He has like this, so it's like his brain works in a really funny way in which he takes snippets of what people tell him in the latest meeting he's ever had. So that's why sometimes you have those funny Trump story where he says something weird windmills cause brain cancer.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone was telling him something about windmills and then there was another thing about brain cancer and his brain just kind of forgot and put them together.
Yeah.
He just kind of takes snippets from things he hears on Fox and Friends and stuff like that, and then he just kind of pieces them together in this bizarre pastiche.
Well, that makes sense because that's why also he always says people are saying, people are saying.
It's always some guy he just met with.
Yeah, some guy just told me in the bathroom.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the reception to his rally speech, and Howard Schultz is not my favorite person, and I want to rip into him. So we will do so when we come back from the break.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. Anna, Nando, and Maz with you. Let me tell you something about where you should be keeping your money, okay?
In my pocket.
You should keep it in your pocket, and you know what? It should grow. And your pocket is aspiration.com/TYT. Okay, so it will grow because they pay you interest, 2%. That's nice, right?
That is nice.
It's not risky. So you don't have to check the stock market. You don't have to try to figure out what Trump is doing and whether or not it's affecting the stocks. All you have to do is open up an account at aspiration.com/TYT, and they do pay you interest. And apparently, I'm being told, It's being reported that there's a very special offer in your inboxes
Wow.
if you check your email as soon as you can. So I don't know what that means, but it sounds exciting. Check it out, check your emails, and just check out aspiration.com/TYT because I think this is a really great financial institution to keep your money, in an ethical way, and it'll help your money grow. It's awesome. All right, let me give you some more stuff. Oh, I wanted to read a few TYT Lives and member comments. So, by the way, if you guys have any interest in trying out membership, you can do it by going to tyt.com/trial. You get a week free. So no commitments at that point. You can just figure out whether or not you like our extra programming that's exclusive to our members, and you can join to help support the show or just to get that extra content. And you know what? I don't see member comments at the moment. Yes, I do. Here we go. Renee says, aw, y'all know what time it is? It's Nando time.
Yeah.
Renee likes you.
There you go, Nando.
Ian says, Nando and Maz, yes.
Ooh.
I'll take
What
that.
am I? I'm just chopped liver?
Become a member and you'll see Maz and I get crazy.
Yes. We switch hair. We switch hair.
Fedora says, Big Macs are overrated.
What? The Big Mac is the greatest thing that American capitalism has ever produced.
Wrong.
That extra bread
standing
in the
by-
middle, though, you don't need
Necessary.
that extra bread. No, I disagree. Maybe we'll talk about this at length during a post game. All right, but we do have to move on. So let's talk a little bit more about Trump's rally, specifically how people have reacted to it. Following Donald Trump's kickoff rally in Orlando, Florida, the women of The View, of course, are gonna have a discussion about it. And this clip really stood out to me because, as we know, Meghan McCain and Joy Behar don't get along so well. But I think Meghan McCain was onto something in the beginning of this clip, and I really wish Behar didn't interrupt her. Let's take a look.
Don't belittle the crowds. Don't belittle the enthusiasm. Democrats still have a lot to come because there's a lot of people still enthusiastic. And I was trying to explain because one of my producers this morning was saying, why do people love him so much? And I was like, sometimes it's not just that they love Trump so much. It's that they hate the same things Trump hates. That's what's going on
Black
as
people,
well.
you mean? And immigrants?
No, I mean,
who do they hate? Who do they hate?
You know what, Joy? I really come
they
here
hate?
every day open-minded, just trying to explain it.
Okay, so my reaction to this is super nuanced because in the end, Meghan McCain made it about her and woe is me, life is unfair and I can't stand that. On the other hand though, I think that she's making an important point that some on the left are so quick to disregard. So are there racists who support Trump? Yes, but are there other reasons that people support Trump? Yes. Now he's not genuine about it, but he does talk about issues that like government corruption. Obviously, he has exploited that for his own personal gain. He doesn't really care about it, but he brings it up and he talks about it. And people are angry about that, right? People want someone who's gonna draw attention to that issue. Economic issues. He's not gonna do anything that's actually gonna help the middle class or working class, but the mere fact that he brings it up and pretends to care about it resonates with his voters. To just disregard that and pretend like it's all about racism, I think is a huge mistake.
So one of the most effective things that people on the right do is that they create a very simple, grand narrative about why people are struggling, right? They point to villains, very specific villains as to what the problems are, namely immigrants, Muslims, Black people, whatever. And then they present themselves as the heroes that are gonna save you from these problems. The problems that Democrats always often find themselves is that they can't counter that because they can't come up with their own set of villains with which to tell a perfect story about why people are struggling. Mostly because the villains that are actually responsible for the problems of most people face are their donor class.
You're right.
So the Democrats can't really go after them directly. So they're left kind of just being like, oh no, it's not immigrants, and yeah, of course. But then people are like, okay, so then what's the problem? And they can't then challenge the system directly. And that's one of the big imbalances in our political system. And that's something that Trump and the right exploit perfectly. And that's what Meghan McCain was kind of getting at.
That's true, but it is pretty incredible because Republicans have the exact same problem that establishment Democrats have, which is the donor class. I mean, the Mercer family helped support Trump. They're not doing it this time around. Apparently they've turned their backs on Trump. But why do you think the one thing that Trump accomplished was tax cuts for the wealthy, right? So it is kind of amazing how that virus affects both parties, but only one party is suffering the consequences of it. I would like to see both parties suffer the consequences of it.
Because Republicans just prop up other villains.
Other villains.
The other, right?
Right.
Immigrants. The Democrats don't have that. They just don't have the villain in the story.
A different scapegoat to Turks.
One of the things that was interesting when you first started the story, and people maybe can later on scroll back and see it, the imagery of the people at the rally who were saying they're not racist, or maybe that's not the only reason that they love Trump, but one of them actually had like he was like a real redneck. He actually had a red neck. With that guy right there. Look at how red that guy's neck is. So anyway, I was just looking at that. I was like, well, whether he likes it or not, he's a redneck. But I think obviously if you break it down, there are fiscal Republicans, right? These Mercers and the sort. And then I think one of the things that I read one time, and I don't know how much studies have been done on this, but it was talking about that a lot of times the conservative brain works out of fear, and the liberal brain works out of hope. So the liberal brain says, let's give it a try. Let's try this out. Let's let the immigrants in. Let's let all this stuff. Let's try this stuff out. Let's try gay marriage. Let's see what happens. The conservative brain says, if you vote for this lady, she's going to be pulling babies out of on the 9th month. They're going to take babies out. They're going to put them in a little. They're going to swallow them and going to kill them. So the fear of like they're going to take all your guns,
right?
And then they're going to all that stuff. So based on fear, these people go, you know what? You're right. I can't go. I agree with you. You're speaking my mind. The African Americans are taking this. The immigrants are taking that. The terrorists are coming. By the way, the biggest threat to Americans are Americans, not Middle Eastern terrorists. So with all that said, I think that Meghan McCain was right in that. But I think that the motivating factor in a lot of what you were saying is they're very good at pointing at the villain, bringing out the fear. And
I don't think Joy Behar is wrong, right? I think that there certainly is that issue with how he has successfully divided Americans, how he has, pointed to the powerless as the catalyst for all of the economic frustration, which is crazy. But at the same time, that economic frustration exists, and I think that it is, the onus is on Democratic candidates to call Trump out on what the reality is. And as you perfectly pointed out, Nando, in the past, Democrats haven't really been able to do that because when you're accepting corporate PAC money or when you're dealing with these donors, you're not gonna wanna upset them by calling them out in your campaign speeches. But things are different now. Now you have people in the Democratic Party who are refusing to take corporate PAC money, and that really liberates them and allows them to be more effective in their campaigning. And I hope that that's what happens this time around. Now, earlier I had mentioned, I apologize, I mentioned Howard Schultz. I meant Howard Kurtz.
We don't like either of the Howards.
I mixed the Howards up for a second. But I do want to go to what Howard Kurtz had to say about Trump's rally, because he was very upset that certain networks did not want to cover or just play Trump's entire rally speech. Take a look.
Fox News carried the whole thing live. MSNBC didn't deign to cover a minute of President Trump kicking off his re-election campaign. And CNN took 2-3 minutes and then dumped out of it. And what I have to say about this is it's just a lack of class. Now, I'm not saying that the cable networks have to cover every Trump rally, and it did turn into a highly partisan speech in Orlando last night. But this really is sort of networks playing into what Steve Bannon used to call acting like the opposition party.
So my response to that was good. Good. So it looks like CNN has actually learned a lesson, and I applaud them for that, because CNN gave Trump all of this free advertising in his last campaign, and it looks like they learned something from that. Good.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Howard Kurtz is one of the most unbelievable hacks in the entire media ecosystem in the United States, and that's saying something. He used to be the Washington bureau chief of the Daily Beast. He was the media critic at the Washington Post. Now he used to host a show on CNN. Now he has this show on Fox News, and his whole shtick has been to be the media critic that defends positive coverage of Trump, whatever Fox News does, criticizes the mainstream media for any negative story about Trump. It's it's become a lucrative shtick for him, but it's just so transparent and obvious. It's pathetic.
Man, the grift that keeps on grifting.
Oh, it's amazing.
There's so much of that.
He's really identified that because he used to be like this kind of mainstream establishment figure, and now he's just become like just this right-wing hack.
It'd be a fun experiment to do. MSNBC should have run another rally from before, just to see what the coverage would be the next day. People would even notice that it's different.
Right, very similar, yeah.
Just to see, and then see what kind of coverage. I'm sure we'd have the same comments going. Like he had 150 lies, and he said Hillary Clinton. I'm sure it was the same thing. So
very similar.
Why run it again?
Exactly, and also this isn't the way that Kurtz tried to frame this was as if Trump was giving a State of the Union address, but he is not. This is a campaign rally, right? And this is very different from, so let me ask Kurtz something. So when, let's say Tulsi Gabbard does a campaign rally, is Fox News and CNN and MSN, do all of them need to cover it, right? If Bernie Sanders is doing a campaign rally, Fox News needs to air the entire campaign rally because if they don't, it would be classless.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, Bernie Sanders' campaign rallies get tens of thousands of people also. I mean, it's like, these aren't minor events, but they would never cover them in that way. Because this was true, now Trump is now the president, you could make an argument, whatever, but this was true back when he was a candidate. They would just like run, I mean, I remember like the whole, just the camera on the podium before he even showed up, just like with like a little ticker counting down. Like it's just,
I remember.
That was insane.
So I remember, like
just an empty podium.
Empty podium. And again, I'm just glad that from what we've seen so far, they've learned a lesson from that, right? Who knows? They can go back and do the empty podium thing again. This is just the beginning of this election cycle. But I love that they're not just giving him free advertising. Again, he's not acting in his official capacity as a president here. This is his campaign kickoff. There is no obligation to cover every single rally speech every single candidate puts out there.
And by the way, they would probably argue and say, well, he's the president, he should cover it. But the fact is, we hear way too much from this president, whether it's on Twitter, on his way to the helicopter, on his way to a rally. And you know what, I'm happy, please, somebody take his phone, just let him stop tweeting, take the cameras, just give us a break just for 2 days. Send him overseas again.
I would love that.
I like it when he goes overseas. You like it I feel good whenever he goes.
The
feel
president,
lighter.
The president of CBS after the last election said Trump may be bad for the country, but he's great for CBS because the media gave him more free coverage than any presidential campaign in the history of American politics.
Les Moonves was the person who said that.
Yes.
He has been ousted from CBS over sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct, not so good for ratings. Anyway, let's move on to some other news. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan is no longer the acting defense secretary, and he will not seek a Senate confirmation to be the permanent defense secretary under the Trump administration because of reports that have surfaced indicating that he beat his wife. And also defended his son after his son beat his wife with a baseball bat.
Wait, his son beat his wife too?
So let me give you the details. This is such a gruesome and disgusting story. And it seems to be a problem that Donald Trump's administration has been riddled with from the very beginning. And we'll get to that in just a second. But according to The Hill, Shanahan and his then wife, Kimberly Jordanson, got into a late night argument in August of 2010 that escalated into a physical fight. Jordanson reportedly told police Shanahan punched her in the stomach while he told police that she was the aggressor and punched him, quote, 10 or 20 times. She was actually arrested on suspicion of domestic violence, but prosecutors later dropped those charges, citing a lack of evidence. There's more though. The Washington Post also detailed a 2011 incident in which Shanahan's and Jordanson's son hit her with a baseball bat, leaving her unconscious in a pool of blood. After the incident, Shanahan flew to Florida, where Jordanson and their son then lived, rushing to the defense of his son. In fact, he put out a memo saying use of a baseball bat in self-defense will likely be viewed as an imbalance of force. However, Will's mother harassed him for nearly 3 hours before the incident. First of all, I don't trust anything this guy says, but even if you give him the benefit of the doubt and you believe that his wife harassed the son for 3 hours, you don't get to beat someone with a baseball bat. But he has shown some remorse about that statement. He says, quite frankly, it's difficult to relive that moment, and the passage was difficult for me to read. I was wrong to write those 3 sentences. Now, with that said, and given all of this stuff that has come up about his domestic abuse, what does Donald Trump have to say about him? Take a look.
Pat Shanahan, who is a wonderful person, is, as you know, going to take some time off for family matters. And I want to thank him for his service. He's a terrific person, and it's a difficult time for Pat, but he's going to take a little time off for family service and for working things out. And I didn't ask him to withdraw, but he walked in this morning. He said it's going to be a rough time for him because of obviously what happened. But I did not ask him to withdraw. He presented me with a letter this morning.
So he referred to Shanahan, a man who defended his son after beating his wife with a baseball bat and leaving her in a pool of blood, referred to him as a wonderful person and a terrific person in the video you just watched.
Yeah, it's just very comforting that the most powerful military in the history of the world, the capacity to blow up the world many times over, was being run by this unhinged, clearly unstable person. I'm not talking about Trump, I'm talking about Shanahan.
And he was pushing for war. I mean, just earlier this week, we were reading quotes from him in regard to invading Iran. It's out of control.
But this guy beats his wife and gets a job in this administration.
His son beat his wife.
Well, no, he punched his wife in the stomach, and then the son with the bat. So he beats his wife and gets a job in the administration. Meanwhile, the Central Park 5 don't commit a crime and they serve 10, 14 years, whatever it is. So Trump, seems to be quick to judge the Central Park 5. But this guy's a good guy who needs to go figure out his issues.
I'm really glad you brought that up because just yesterday, April Ryan asked Trump whether he would apologize for what he had said about the Central Park 5. We're talking about men who were exonerated. They had served time in prison for a crime they did not commit, and they were exonerated using DNA evidence. They were innocent. And Trump refuses to apologize to them, would never refer to them as wonderful people or terrific people. But when it comes to this guy, Shanahan, he has no problem, calling him all these positive names, being incredibly complimentary toward him. What also stood out to me was the fact that Shanahan has actually been confirmed before by our Senate. And so what kind of vetting takes place? Like, what are these confirmation hearings for? First of all, you have various members of Trump's administration who have lied under oath, no consequences, who cares, right? And then you have this case where this guy has carried out acts of violence against his own family members, his wife. How do you not know about that? What kind of vetting takes place? Is there any vetting? Do people in Congress do anything?
Well, these people in Congress, they see that he was a 30-year employee of Boeing, one of the nation's top defense contractors, and that's good enough for them.
Right.
Well, he was saying that he wants to implement extreme vetting for immigrants coming to America. Extreme vetting. Maybe he should start doing some extreme vetting for the people that are going to be in his administration, so we don't end up with all these people abusing women that are in his administration. Wasn't there the other guy? What was his name? I forget his name. Every 6 months to a year, one of these guys. I mean, this is president grabbing by the, so.
Yeah, maybe. And so I just want to wrap this up by mentioning when people like me get upset at women who vote for Trump, it's not because we have ideological differences, right? If you are a conservative woman who has conservative values, do you, boo, right? I'm not gonna hate on you for that. But I will be upset when you vote for someone who treats women as second-class citizens. Because if you're cool with that, cool, I mean, all right. But then that's gonna extend to my life. I don't want someone leading this country, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, treating anyone as a second-class citizen. And the way that Trump has talked about women, the way that he has treated men who have abused women, makes it abundantly clear that he sees women as second-class citizens. We gotta take a break. We'll have more for you when we return.